Hi, Peter Charles of Hooked Fly Fly Fishing, and welcome to my video on tying the saltwater weamer. Now, the weamer is a style of fly tying that I do, which is a mixture of both streamers and wet flies, hence the name. And this particular fly has been quite successful for me when used in saltwater for striped bass, bluefish, and also hickory shad. I've caught all of them on it, and it's been quite effective. And the interesting thing about it as well is turned out to be reasonably durable. Normally when we put marabou on a fly, we don't expect a great deal of durability out of it, and yeah, they do get beaten up. But they still continue to work even with the marabou being pretty ripped up. So it's still an effective fly, even though it can get a little ratty looking at the end of the day. But I've gone through like 15 or 20 bluefish on one of these flies, and it was still in reasonable condition at the end of the day. So let's get into it. It's a very simple pattern, and I think you'll find it quite easy and quick to tie. So let's look at the materials. The hook I'm using here is a typical saltwater straight eye hook. It's a 2/0 size. You pick the size of hook depending on the size of the bait you're trying to imitate. The thread we're using is Uni Big Fly, and this is a very thick thread. I'm using it to build up a lot of bulk to make a large head. Now, in the fly that I had in the vise earlier, I used a very thin thread, which resulted in a very pointy, skinny head, typical of what you'd see in a sand eel. So it depends on the bait fish you're trying to imitate. I'm going after something that's a little bit more like peanut bunker in this particular pattern, so I'm going with the big thread. The hackle is white marabou, and as you can see, I've trimmed off one side to avoid it getting too bulky. This is a pearlescent flash. You can also use silver as well. The wing is this olive gray. I particularly like it because it's very close to a natural color. It's a hard color to find. A lot of the olives out there are very green, and that can work for some bait fish, but I find you want sort of a gray-green for a lot of these bait fish patterns, and this color actually works rather well. As I say, it is hard to find, so if you find a bunch of them, grab them all. I mean, it really does work, because if I've been there ahead of you, you won't be able to find any. We're going to use mylar stick-on eyes. I like a big eye. I mean, that's a target area for a predator, so a nice big eye helps. And finally, to cover that eye, we're going to use some Danville fine monofilament. Okay, let's start by tying on our thread. Don't go too far back here because that section is going to be left bare. Okay, we tie in our marabou by the tip. And I fold that over. We'll leave that in place. Wind forward. Now I'm using a rotary vise, so I'll use my bobbin holder. I recommend hackle pliers for this, especially because the tips of marabou feathers are easily broken. So I usually put in one wrap to get started, or one or two wraps to get started, and then I'll push this material back. So you keep folding the material back and wind in front of the previous wrap. Always wind it forward. Now here's where we add to the durability of this fly. I'm going to put a couple of wraps over the end of the barbs of the marabou, and that kind of traps them, and that helps to stop them from pulling out. I'm just going to build up the thread a little bit. Remember, we want a big head on this fly. Next, I'm just going to come in here with the crystal flash and pick out a few strands. At this stage, you could add some silver as well if you wanted, or some crystal flash. Your choice. It depends on how much you want this thing to shine in the water. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to continue building up this head a little bit and get a nice ramp going on this, a nice smooth ramp. This is where the big thread is useful in building up this bulk. Now we're going to tie this off. We're going to put on our monofilament. We're going to use the monofilament to tie on the wing because that allows the white color in here to show through, yet the wing stays olive. We don't get this white blob at the front of the fly. When you're cutting bucktail, always take it from the tip. Now I like to pick out any of the short fibers here. Now there's two ways to tie in bucktail. You could level up the tips. I'll get rid of that scraggly bit there. You can level up the tips and tie that. That can often produce a kind of a bump in the front of the head. The other way is to just tie it a little bit further on and trim it off. So we're going to first pinch loop this on. Now what I'm going to do here is come in with my scissors and cut this at an angle. Be careful not to cut your thread. Now you see what we've done is we've created a ramp. So I'm just going to work my thread back and very pulling up. So I'm going to wrap over, pull up, and just keep working my way down. So now we have a head that has more of a natural taper to it. Lastly, we're going to put on our stick-on eyes. Just grab our bodkin and peel them off. Now these are large eyes, and that's why this large head is useful. I can now put those in place. I'll just put a wrap on this one, move this forward. If you don't wrap over the mylar eyes, you can try using glue to hold them in place. I'd much rather wrap a few strands of monofilament on that, and just keeps the eyes from being pulled off when you have a few fish hit it. Now the last stage is the head cement. Important with saltwater flies, you want a durable finish. One approach is to use epoxy. I have a two-step approach using UV glue and top coat, which is designed to go over UV glue that's used on women's fingernails. So be careful if you're buying this stuff. Don't buy ordinary nail polish, buy what's called top coat. Be careful not to overdo the UV glue. It becomes harder to cure if it's thick. We're getting a bubble forming, so I'm just going to, this is where the rotary vise comes in handy. I'm just going to spin this so it's smooth all the way around. Slow this down. Now, if you've used UV glues in the past, you'll notice that they tend to be tacky and the gloss comes off of them once they get handled. They don't look so great. You can leave them out in a hot baking sun and they'll be fine. But, you know, it's a miserable overcast day today, and let's say if I want to go fishing with this fly tomorrow, top coat comes in handy. What the top coat does is it seals the UV glue, keeps that glossy look to it, and removes that tackiness. So once this is dry, and it dries quickly, once this is dry, you can handle that head without any tackiness whatsoever, and it will stay glossy. It won't go milky white on you. And that's definitely what you want if you've got a nice big eye that you want it to shine through. You don't want that head turning milky white and end up losing all the luster in that eye. Anyway, there's the Saltwater Weamer. Very easy pattern to tie. You don't have to be precise about the thing. You can just whip it together real fast. I mean, if you want to turn up dozens of these things, you can do it very, very quickly. It's very effective. It's got a lot of fish for me. And it's surprisingly durable despite the marabou. So give it a try, the Saltwater Weamer. Cheers.